There's an attitude of anything goes, that anything is justified to make money. If someone is critical, they are potentially turning off potential customers. Therefore, it's anything to silence them is justified. They know that with so many corporate lobbyists and various governments, they know that the individuals can never stand up to them. They can never afford to. They know that they've got the full legal weight of the law to throw it at people and silence people. They know they'll never be held accountable for any of that. And if they do, they can always just spread it all out, muddy the waters, and end up paying some miniature fine after dragging someone's life through the courts and through various appeals and really running them down and destroying their reputation. Then they can then end up saying, we'll just pay them $100,000 and sign an NDA and get them to shut up, basically. They know they can get away with that. They know there's no accountability. So, I mean, the idea of them doing that from their work computers, like, who cares? Why should they go to any extra effort to hide who they are? They know they're never going to be held accountable.
Well, I think in closing, it's certainly for myself, it matters not where the source of these attacks come from, and it could well be just a tragic individual sat behind a computer screen who has nothing better to do than to try and make other people's life a misery. And like I say, it would be less of a bitter pill to swallow if it did transpire that they were doing it for some employment benefit, and not just a sad individual sat behind the screen. But at the end of the day, what these people have always failed to grasp, and I think this is human nature, we can all be critical. I mean, there's opinions that Roy has.
Criticism. Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say that we can all be critical, as in, Roy can say something that I can disagree with, and I can ask him about it. We'll have a debate, and at the end of it, we'll go away shaking digital hands. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But these people and the attacks that they do, they haven't yet realised that when you make something personal, certainly if my observations of human nature are anything to go by, if you make something personal, you only strengthen the resolve of somebody who is giving out a message or giving out a belief, and if they're attacked personally, it tends just to strengthen their resolve in that belief and make them more proactive in spreading the message that they have an honest held belief in. And this is what a lot of these accounts have failed to grasp. And I think I certainly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for what I observed on the site Microsoft Watch. Funnily enough, tonight, as we speak, Chips is who I'd like to class as a very good online friend of mine, has appeared in IRC in TechBytes IRC channel, and I haven't spoken to him for quite a few weeks. And it was people like him that introduced me to the types of dubious individuals that I now find myself on the receiving end of. And like I say, human nature, you make it personal, you only strengthen somebody's resolve. I'm certainly not going to cower away from my opinions and my beliefs just because somebody insults me or tries to. But moving on.
Yeah, so someone actually, I should point out, I look back and I think about all the things I've been doing, especially in the past 5 years. When those people who were insulting me and threatening me, they were usually the motivation I had to carry on with the same subject. Actually, one person even created a whole website, a whole domain, and maintained a whole blog, which is just dedicated to attacking my work and my site. And I took it as more of like almost a badge of honor. I wouldn't actually promote the site or mention the site. I don't do that now. But the fact that a person would, and you know what the defense was to them, they say, well, you're criticizing Microsoft and these companies. Well, Microsoft is a very big company with a lot of people. They tried to justify me criticizing Microsoft for them running a campaign against one person. Oh, it's completely insane.
It's certainly a compliment to have this done. But what I would say to any company who does pay individuals to do these type of actions, if such a company exists, I would say this: what you're doing is merely increasing the voice and increasing the support that people have. Like Roy said, it served as a badge of honour in respect to him. And certainly when I see criticism, I always believe that if I truly was insignificant, as they say, and truly had no opinion, then they wouldn't bother writing. I mean, I read opinions on the net all the time. For example, the face on Mars or aliens in Area 51, and I don't feel the need to go and write an opposing website just to say that I don't agree with that person. So yeah, it should be taken as a compliment. It should be taken that there is worth in what people say. And I say to anybody with a view on anything, get yourself writing a blog and note for yourself what type of comments you get and who you get them from. And don't be put off. Have a thick skin, I think, is the other point as well.
I believe that newsgroups is one of the areas of Linux advocacy that the team has been a part of for the past few years. And one very good person from there, his name is Keith, his real name is Keith, he goes by Slated and Homer online. So he was once making the point that all those trolls that go to the channels, the advocacy channels, and completely harassing members, threatening them with, we'll try to get you fired and things like that, the fact that these people come to a Linux channel to disrupt the channel is akin to a person like yourself who perhaps doesn't like Britney Spears music going to forums of Britney Spears and trying to make miserable the lives of people who just basically go because they like Britney Spears and like harass, 14-year-old girls who like the music. It makes no sense. So unless they have financial incentive to do so, they probably wouldn't bother with any of that. One point, very quick point I was going to make before is you mentioned that if you're a critic of something, you might be on the receiving end of something from that company. But this is not true. I mean, back in 2005, 2006, I was harassed because I was promoting Linux. And this is true for a lot of people will tell you that all they did was write positive things about Linux and perhaps did so quite effectively. So they were seen as something that needs to be delegitimized, something has to be shamed. So that people don't listen to because from Microsoft's point of view or from Apple's point of view, any promotion of the competition, if it is effective enough, it has to be dismantled in some way, as much as possible. And that's the troubling thing. You don't have to be a critic. If you're going to just be a person who's promoting a point of view of the left or the right or something in politics, you will be defamed for the fact that you have this position. You don't have to shame the other side. You don't have to shame the president or the opposition party. If you are a very reasonable person making good points and making good advocacy for a certain party, you probably will be at least ridiculed, if not threatened in some way.
Well, on that note, I think if both you gentlemen are in agreement, we'll look to wrap up the show. Gordon, are you happy that we close off now?
Yeah, I'll go for it.
And
Roy, anything else you want to add before we do my closing comments?
Yeah, I think you did have something to say about the. Was it to do with trolls or anything?
Yeah, I'm going to do my Jerry Springer close-off speech in a second. So if you've got any other
Jerry,
thank
Jerry.
you, Gordon.
So I throw a chair.
And I just wanted to drop a quick remark, which I thought about and I spoke to you the previous week. I was talking to you about my attitude towards Linux news in general, and I think this is a subject I brought up earlier in the show. And this is really important to me because recently I've had less time to dedicate to the site, and people will probably know that because I spent, for the past month and a half, I really spent a lot of my time programming and doing things like that. But one of the things that occurred to me is that we don't have a good diversity of Linux news, and I think in general, with the decline of things like Linux Today and Grocklaw, we are losing some sources of Linux news, and what we're left with is like Ubuntu sites and Android site. And that's kind of fine, but it still changes what we actually strive towards as people work towards perhaps of freedom through Linux, and Linux is like the common carrier that's supposed to carry with it all the free software. And one of the things I thought about, and this is just a personal opinion, is the reason we don't have the flame wars around Linux and talking about, oh, Linux is ready for the desktop, Linux is not ready for the desktop, Linux is wonderful, Linux is great, Linux sucks. We don't see many of those articles anymore, not because it's repetitive, but because the trolls kind of gave up because they lost interest in trying to fight against Linux. And so what we consider to be Linux advocates, and this is something you agreed with me on, is becoming somewhat obsolete. As some of us kind of predicted way back in the days, we said, well, when Linux succeeds, the Linux users groups and the advocacy will become less necessary because it will be so mainstream that we'll just feel like we're some kind of cheerleaders for Google and IBM, these companies that do very well with Linux, and continue to see a thriving ecosystem around the works that most of us call Linux. It can be Linux and GNU/Linux, and it can be everything that's to do with free software and GPL, which is licensed. I think so. I think right now, even despite all the the fear, uncertainty, and doubt campaigns against the GPL, especially the GPL v3, I think we still have a situation where most of the open source code out there is GPL licensed. It used to be something like 60%, and I think it's over 50% still. So in general, since you mentioned the troll, I think that the trolls too are going to become sort of a dying breed in years to come. That's my opinion. And